point. Thank you. Kia ora koutou, morning everybody. Welcome to this morning's Kaipara District Council extraordinary meeting, beaming at you live from Dargaville. Today's the 13th of April and we have one item on today's agenda. For today, I'm going to open today's meeting with a karakia. Kia horo te marino, kia whakapapu pounamu te moana, hei hoa rahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, araha atu, araha mai, tātou ia, tātou katoa. Thank you. At this point, I would like to call for apologies for today's meeting, and we have a full apology from Councillor Joyce Paki.
And an apology from Councillor Larson.
And an apology from Councillor Larson.
Was that you, Sue, speaking?
No, it wasn't.
Sorry, we just got another person.
Carry on.
Sorry, okay, and so, yes, and that's Di Miller, sorry. So there are various staff who are...
Di Miller's now coming over to the meeting in person.
Okay, thank you. Who are joining us digitally as well. So, it's just so at this point we have, so in the room, sorry Tracy, if you could roll the screen back down, thank you. Just for clarity and the avoidance of doubt, we have Deputy Mayor Anna Curnow is present in the room. Councillor Mark Vincent is present in the room. Councillor Victoria Delavaris Woodcock is present in the room. Councillor Peter Wethy is present in the room. I'm present in the room. Councillor David Wills is joining us by telephone. Councillor Erin Wilson-Collin is joining us by video Zoom link. So we have lots of wonderful technology going on here, but there are the apologies of Councillor Joyce Paki and Councillor Larson, and so I would like to move that those be accepted. I'm seeking a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Curnow. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Today, confirmation of the agenda. We have one item on the agenda for today. Councillor Curnow moving that. Thank you. And I'm seeking a seconder for that. Councillor Vincent, thank you. Is there any commentary regarding the confirmation of the agenda? Nothing, thank you. So at this point, we're going to put this to the vote now to confirm the agenda for today. All those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Conflict of interest declaration, item number 1.4. Are there any conflicts of interest, elected members, regarding today's decisions? No conflicts of interest. None recorded. All right, thank you. Thank you. So at this point, we move into the work for today and the one item for discussion, which is Poto Wharf options and funding, and we have a recommendation here. As it stands, so I would like to move this item as recommended, and Councillor David Wills is wanting to second this item as written. So that puts it onto the table for us for our discussion here this morning. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to go to Sue Davidson to lead us through this item. So Sue joining us by telephone. Kia ora, Morena.
Yeah, kia ora, Your Worship. Thank you for the introduction. Poto Wharf is the last of the harbour assets to be built and funded. And this paper shows there will be cost to council, regardless of deciding to go forward and build the wharf or whether to abandon it. The wharf was identified as important because of the tourism it would bring to Kaipara, and the government is contributing $2.4 million for option 2, or for any of the options. Council's been asked for $265,000, and which is only a 10% over the cost, but no less it is over what was originally budgeted. If council chooses to abandon the project, then the $2.6 million cannot be used elsewhere. But to fund the $265,000, I've established there are sufficient funds in the district reserves. The only issue with the paper itself is that we found that you'll see on page 2, there's no contingency listed for option 1. So there should be a contingency there. And so in actual fact, the financial impact on council would be $615,000 plus additional contingency, which we think would be around about $300,000, making the cost of an additional $915,000. I had some questions from elected members. Could we apply for additional funding for the government? We have tried to do that, but basically they've given us, as it says in the very beginning, it was nearly $5 million for all of our harbour structures, and the fund doesn't have any more funds for us in that area. And another question was about the diagrams. Were the wharves different sizes for option 2? No, they're exactly the same size, but they weren't drawn that carefully to scale. And I had another question about the wharf and the fact that during sou'westerlies there could be difficulties for commercial operators. And we have had discussions with the commercial operators. They understand that that is a challenge when there are sou'westerlies. And in fact, they've said they may not even run if it is quite a blasting sou'westerly. And another question was about the degradation to the foreshore of a large commercial boats running against the soft sandstone as they load and unload passengers. And we've gone back to our consultant, and they've said that they expect that the land-based wharf will help with this issue rather than the longer wharf of option 1. And there was another question from Councillor Vincent about is there sufficient funds in the district reserve contribution. I think I talked to you at the last meeting that was 378 additional this year, and there's now to date there's about 408,000 in total, and there are sufficient funds to pay. So I'll hand over to Di Miller, who's working on this as the project manager on this, if she's got something else to add.
Thank you, Sue. So Di Miller is here present in the room, but not on the screen, but she's just sitting underneath the camera, but she's right here.
Yeah, good morning. I had a bit of trouble connecting there, and then realised you were over the road, so that was helpful. Yeah.
Please speak up.
Speak up, yeah, absolutely. All right, so some of you'll know me from the long-term plan days. So I've worked in the infrastructure team for the last 12 months now. So I've been working alongside Brodie and others who have been project managing the Poto Wharf project. I've been focused on it, directly focused on it since Brodie left for just a fortnight, and I've prioritised understanding exactly what is going on, why we are where we are, and all the financial risks for the most part as we move forward. And I think we've been fortunate that we've got some new people on the team. We have a delivery manager and a new general manager who fresh eyes and have asked all the right questions, and I feel really comfortable that what we've presented to you is solid. Yeah, I thought I would just reflect just very briefly on how we've got to this point, and I do acknowledge that there is the externally funded projects committee, and that you are familiar with how we got to this point for the most part. But very briefly, if I can just go through it in terms of. Obviously, we had this funding from MB, the $950,000, which was our feasibility money. We ended up with a program business case and then a detailed business case, which identified these locations on the Kaipara Harbour, the three locations being Poto, Pahi and Dargaville. So what then flowed out of that was Isthmus, which was working with AR and Associates, did their concept design of a wharf. So the detailed business case had I think about 5 or 6 options of a wharf location down at Poto, and all things were pointing towards that Fisherman's Point location being the prime location for the wharf, and Isthmus built a concept design based on that location. It was a really I should say all singing, dancing wharf. It was a big concrete reinforced structure that I believe was as much as $8 million. Was what the thinking of what they forecast it was going to cost, which was way outside of our constraints that we have with our funder. So that led us to the WSP approach, which was a detailed design and construct tender, which we've now got STF and EDL contracted for that work. And they came to site to see whether there was anything they could do that was different to that big, concrete structure that could still be on Fisherman's Point. And the reality was that it was going to need 14-metre piles, which it becomes very, very costly. And in addition to that, a wharf in that location needs to be built for the most part from the water, and that adds risk and cost, particularly in the current environment with the cost of materials and the scarcity of materials, not to mention just the general risk of building from the water. So as a result of that, that then meant that Fisherman's Point was going to be beyond the parameters of our budget. And so STF looked at what else that they could do that would still meet all of our objectives while, but be more affordable. And that's when they've come up with this land-based option. So the land-based option is a really good balance of the budget. I think the end user experience, the environmental considerations, and whole of life as well, which I'd really probably need to stress, the whole of life costs for a council like Kaipara District Council. So a land-based wharf reduces that risk of some huge bills, when fenders and things get damaged in the future, because they can be addressed from the land. Whereas if you were at Fisherman's Point, for example, the moment a fender gets damaged, it's $40,000 to come in and sort that out. So how have I satisfied myself and the team satisfied ourselves that is a good option? So I've spent that 2 weeks speaking with our consultants really regularly, bringing in our advisory group into those conversations, and then also testing that with who I consider is probably an independent sort of advisory group member, and that our member from Far North Holdings, who builds and maintains wharves and has done, I don't know, half a dozen or more of them, I think, since we started on Kaipara Kickstart, and get him in the room with our contractor to just ask all the right questions. He understands the context of Kaipara Kickstart and what we're trying to achieve, and just test it. Sorry, thought that was off. That was the boating club, Brian Drake. Gosh, speaking of boats, anyway, so Chris, Far North Holdings rather had a really good dialogue with our contractor, and is really comfortable that this is it. We've landed in a good place, and actually, even if there was more budget, this is a really great a great solution for quite. In terms of, so, you know, our new general manager is thinking about our financial risks, naturally, you know, in this next stage, once we go into construction. So there are three risks, three key risks. Probably the first one, which I think an elected member has raised through one of our other forums, through the committee meeting, was around the resource consent and the potential for public notification. So the team have had, I've been on a call with NRC, with Paul Maxwell and the consents team, and he's asked all the right questions. He's really satisfied that it is highly unlikely that we'll need to go to public notification. And that's because of the amount of consultation that we've had with the community already, and the messaging, and, you know, there's no unknowns. Iwi are really on board, and in fact, really advocating for this and asking me what they can do to make sure this goes ahead. So that's the resource consent side. So I think that's not an issue. It leaves two risks. One is procurement, and it's the fact that the longer we take to actually commit to sourcing materials and that procurement, the more risk of the price of those moving up. So that's a risk we need to eliminate as soon as possible by getting, you know, awarding that construction contract and doing that procurement, and then that one goes away. The longer we leave it, the wobblier our contingency is going to get. And that leaves one other risk, which is what's underground. And so typically what's underground is quite a big risk, but our contractor, when they came to site, said that they were able to hand drill a long way, and they believe that it is soft enough, and that to them is not a big risk either. And certainly the contingency we're proposing of 175,000 would more than cover anything that could possibly eventuate in that regard. So yeah, we're quite comfortable, I guess, that that 175 is sufficient. Everything else is pretty plain sailing, and WSP, for example, had built in quite a bit of contingency into their costs, and that's probably because of the nature of how we've rolled to date. And, you know, COVID and other things have meant that this has been a lot longer than any of us wanted. So they've removed that contingency now, and also because we've got that land-based option, the MSQA, or the quality assurance side of it, gets reduced considerably. So that cost is just about halved. What's the other area that we've got some savings there? Hang on. They're probably the main ones, actually. And then, the design review, we don't need to do as much of that as what was originally budgeted for. So we're asking for 265,000. There's known savings right now with WSP of at least 62,000. And then with STF, our construction contractor, there's a negative variation right now in that first portion of the contract we're in right now of 130,000. So combined there straight away, there's a known $200,000 that we don't think we're going to need. So effectively, you know, we're in good shape. So gosh, what else have I got here that I wanted to highlight? Probably just the next steps, really. From here we move into finalising the detailed design. We're quite a fair way through detailed design already, in terms of, you know, the resource consent is going to be lodged after this meeting if everyone's on board. So the detailed design gets finalised for construction. We award construction, and then we spend half a day down in Poto and with our consultants and with all the photos and with the community, and taking them all through it. And I think that's all for me. Any questions?
Thank you, Di. I'm sure there will be questions from elected members. Councillor Wethy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions from me, Di, if you could. You mentioned these negative variances from some of the contractors. Have they been taken into account before this contingency has been calculated of 275? In other words, you've assumed that you're going to get those savings and you'll still need that, or have you said that's the contingency, but we've then got to look forward to some of those negative variances? That's question one.
Sure.
So what is your position on that?
Yeah, through the chair. The answer is no, they're not factored in at the moment. So they're at the moment sitting here as a possibility. It's not factored into our budget for.
So to clarify that is that if you are correct and all those negative variances come through, they may negate the extra funding that council would have to put up of 275.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Second question. Has there been any assessment made for the option 2 in terms of the ongoing maintenance and operational costs of that wharf that council would have to provide in their annual budgets?
Yeah. Yes, I've looked at that and talked with Finals Holdings and others about what that could look like. Certainly, yeah, that land-based option is far more affordable. If you're repairing a fender on that, it's $5,000 compared to $40,000 for to do a land-based job. If it was Fisherman's Point, so there's that big difference. If I look at Tinapai and the costs that council have incurred for Tinapai for the last 2 to 3 years, it's about $7,500 total over that period. That's like water blasting, replacing, bolts and timber and stuff like that. So this is a bigger structure. It's probably more like something like that figure a year, given, provided nothing serious, major happens. Yeah,
Okay.
Through the chair.
Thank you. Thank you. We got Councillor Wilson-Collins with a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Sue and Di and Annan for the paper and the presentation. I did have a couple of questions. Please bear with me because I'm just working off the one device and I've been trying to make notes as we go. So I sent in a question before the meeting, just in regards on page 2, we've got that table there that shows the financial implications of the 3 options. And the third option, abandoning the project, I just asked what the total spend to date has actually been on the project. I was just a bit confused by the figures there. Can I get an answer on that question?
Sure, through the chair. The spend today is $258,000. So there's $169,000 that is in our bank account right now from MB.
What happened?
I think we've lost them.
No, I'm here. Sue Davidson's here.
Yeah. Sorry, we just had a minor technical fault there. The wrong plug was pulled out. But we're all back. Councillor Wilson-Collins, can you hear us? Please wave your hand if you can hear us. Yeah, you can. Thank you. Okay, so we're live again. Thank you. Yes. Okay, right. Well, sorry, can we just go back, please? Because we had a disturbance here in the room. Can we please just go back answering the question again? Thank you. Di, if you can.
Sure, yeah, through the chair. The cost to date that the project has actually spent is $258,000. I'm pretty sure that's the figure in the report there. And the $169,000, when you add that on to the 258, you end up with the 428. That is the cost of abandoning the project. That 169 is money that MB has awarded to us against an earlier claim for expenses that we've incurred that we've not actually spent. So it would have been a big number that was attached to a deliverable, and there's $169,000 left of that. So if that's not spent on this wharf, then council need to reimburse MB that amount.
So just to clarify, we'd have to reimburse MB and then we would have to cover that cost that we've already claimed on. That is that.
Yes, that's correct.
Becomes it, yeah. I'm just like, if they've given us money and we haven't spent it, we have to give it back. I don't, yeah. But that clears that up for me. Thank you very much. I do have another question while I click on all my different screens here. Just Sue mentioned the contingency for option 1 would be around 300,000. Did I hear that correct? I'm just wondering why.
Yes, you heard that. That is what Sue said. Yes, correct.
So why would the contingency for option 1 be about 10% of the total budget, but option 2 isn't? It's only 175,000 to a $2.6 million project. What's the reasoning behind that, please?
Through the chair, I think we had 175,000 in the original project for option 2, but option 1 we'd actually left contingency out. So looking at it, you'd normally have 300,000, and if and we just didn't estimate as much in option 2. That would be my guess.
Okay, but from what I heard from you, Di, you're still comfortable with that that amount of contingency for option 2?
Through the chair, yes, very comfortable. I think there's a lot more knowns about option 2 than there is about option 1, and that's probably the key difference. You know, that example of WSP releasing their contingency, yeah, I think we're at a point with the land-based wharf where there's a lot more comfort and a lot more knowns, whereas the Fisherman's Point location, yeah, there's a 10% contingency across the board. There's an estimate for a part of that that is not being tested thoroughly, and that's $350,000 of that cost is not understood really well. You know, we need to.
Thank you, Councillor Curnow, then Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, and I have a question as well, and then Councillor Vincent. Thank you.
I'm just sort of drilling into the risk side of it. Obviously, the location, either location has risks of weather events and such like. Where does that risk lie? Does the contract include any sort of mitigation for those? Say there's a huge storm and the project that's half built gets kind of swept away. Where does that lie in the contract?
So in terms of insurance,
yeah, is it all fully covered by insurance? Do we have insurance cover on the contract?
To be completely honest, I would need to, through the chair, I would need to come back to you because it's not something I've been able to look at in the last 2 weeks. Okay. So is that something you're familiar with?
No, but normally it would be covered by insurance and probably the builder's insurance, I would have thought. But
yeah.
We can
I'm just thinking that because of the location, it's a high risk environment, and just want to make sure we've got the right cover.
And then you've joined us there by camera. Do you have a comment here to this question? Thank you.
Yeah, very good questions, Councillor, and through you, Chair. What I'm proposing to do, there's been quite a lot of moving parts on this project, as you can see. So with the team, I'm proposing that we do a value engineering workshop with all parties involved, and what that entails is that we start to sort of dive into the design, the construction, the timetable, and the risks. And my expectation by the end of that workshop is that we actually allocate risk where it's best sat. So council may choose to take some of the risk because it's appropriate, but there's quite a lot of risk that I'd like the contractor to take up because they're best to manage it. So I think we need a little bit of time just to untangle that, and if there are any issues that arise out of the change in the paper, we certainly will come back to council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock, question.
Yes, so my question, with the paper that's accompanying our decision-making report today, on page 33, the Poto Point Wharf detailed business case, it's got Wharf option 1, option 2, and option 3. None of those options that were actually studied and assessed and analysed in this business case are the beach landing, are they?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So am I also correct in that when, as I remember, the public consultation process is one of the events that I attended with the WSP, the options that the community were given were those options to consider and not the beach landing, is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. I'll add to that, and just to let you know that we are in contact with that community and they're aware of the potential for the change. Yeah, so they've seen that concept, and it's what I say. There's been no objection to it thus far, but we recognise that we need to get back down into the community, and that's what I was saying earlier, is that our next steps are to get down there and make sure that everyone understands what it is that they're getting, or why we are where we are, and get them excited and on board with that.
So you're asking us to make a decision today in advance of you actually having this full consulting the community on this new option that's come from nowhere. It's come from a cost-saving exercise.
There's an element of chicken and egg here, and balancing those two things, and the pressure from our funder to just get the thing built. So one thing that is clear.
Can I just, so you're saying that there's pressure from the funder to get this built?
That's probably not, through the chair, probably not the best choice of words, but look, we've had a formal extension to our funding arrangement in terms of having the wharf needs to be completed by the end of August, and part of that agreement was, MB agreed to support us with the dollar figures that are highlighted in the report, and assign some funding that was allocated to other areas to this wharf on the basis that we had it finished by August. Yeah.
Are you saying that that they believe, and the contractors have said, that this wharf can be completed by the end of August?
Through the chair, it's fairly ambitious. It is ambitious. We were fortunate enough to have someone from MB working for us for a time, and our understanding is that provided we are awarding a construction contract and getting on with it, that August date is probably less important, but they want to see some action. Yeah.
Right. So I lived in Poto, and my family, members of my family live there, so I know the area. Has there been any studies at all done about the shifting nature of the sand and what would happen if the wall structure changes dynamics, which is an incredibly dynamic area of sand build up and covering that wharf, because it shifts constantly? Has there been any understanding of what the maintenance, construction risks, or the operations of that structure are in that dynamic sand moving environment?
The chair, there has been quite an investment into understanding that area, and I haven't been able to get my head around all of it, so forgive me for that, but there was a water-based survey done, which I believe, works out all the levels under the water and what's happening beneath the water. That was very involved and is far more complicated than what I've just described. So there's that has happened. In terms of environment and biodiversity and bioresearch have done some work, consultants, to support the resource consent and just the expectations under that consent. So yes,
Thank you.
yes to that too. Yeah.
So where Poto Wharf access, there's a car park. It's a very rugged, stony car park, and then there's a very simple cutting beside a forested area on the right and private property on the left. And what is the risk of this council having to fund, the ratepayers, the district, having to fund the access point onto this boardwalk? Because I cannot see any understanding or sense of how on earth you're going to get from that car park, which is totally unimproved and kind of untouched, onto a boardwalk structure when it's also the same access point for people to use the beach and vehicles. So all I know is, can you give this council assurance that if we approve this and this building goes ahead and there's no getting back, that we will not be asked for improving the car park and trying to create an access point, a safe access point, because it's dynamic like Bailey's Beach, onto the boardwalk that's also in competition for vehicle access use. So how are we going to get pedestrians onto that boardwalk in a very crowded topographical area?
Yeah, through the chair, it's definitely something we've been thinking about, and absolutely it's like Bailey's Beach in that regard. So the Tourism Infrastructure Fund is open at the moment, and our planning team, that's certainly in the list of the applications that we're making to the Tourism Infrastructure Fund, is that car park and the connectivity to the wharf and what that looks like. And, you know, just upgrading amenities in general around, you know, so toilets and rubbish bins, and just making sure that we're not just building the wharf and not thinking about all the other things that we're going to need. So that's with our planning team at the moment.
Okay, but the Tourist and Infrastructure Fund, Diane, I know how many other communities would love to get funds from that. So are you saying that as an officer of the staff, that is that's a given, that we will get our non-ratepayer money to fund what's obviously going to be needed over and above this boardwalk construction?
Through the chair.
Through the chair, that's not a given, but we will try. But the other thing that is a given, has been put in our long-term plan, is 250,000 each year to provide for car parking around the district. So we would look to prioritise that funding.
Thank you, Sue Davidson, for that extra answer there. Thank you. Question?
Yeah, I've had one more.
One more question, Councillor De Lavaris Woodcock.
Yes, I think, Sue, when you did your first speech, you said that the beach landing option would be is more damaging to the soft sandstone at the beach than this jetty option. Which is more damaging? That was
I'll ask Diane to.
Oh, sure.
From another councillor.
Confusing question.
Through the chair,
Right.
yes. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the exact nature of the question. So it was to do with the sandstone, I recall, and mitigating the risk of the damage. Yeah, in my conversations with the consultants, they believe that land-based wharf will mitigate that risk because you're further south from the sandstone. There's also about 10 or 15 metres north of the land-based wharf between that and that sandstone area for larger barges, boats to come in, which is quite a significant space, without them needing to go near that sandstone. There's plenty of room.
So you're saying that the wharf that would be built would not be used for large barges at all? So it's actually not a commercial tie-up wharf?
Through the chair, it will take large vessels, absolutely. Some vessels choose not to come up against a wharf, and I'm not a boatie, I have to acknowledge, but I've learnt recently that you know, through talking to Terry Summers from the QP2 and others, that you know that often that is just a preference, is to come up onto the sand for whatever reason. There was, you know, in the pros and cons in the report, Terry's thoughts on some of that, the sea energy and the different, you know, his different thinking around pros and cons of
Okay, and
adoption.
my final question.
There is a final exceptional.
This is important. Okay, so many of Pahi wharfs has come back needing $75,000 more, even once it's completed. Dargaville Wharf went over budget. The fit out of the NRC build went 3 times over budget. How much certainty can you give this council that you will not be needing, the construction will not need to come back and ask for further funds to any degree? This is the last.
Through the chair, yeah, based on the conversations that I've had with our consultants, Kurt Martin, our engineer to the contract, has also been part of those conversations and knows that contract better than any of us. He's been on that journey longer. Yeah, we're really comfortable, particularly given, so if we can get on with our procurement, like as soon as possible, and by that I mean awarding that separable portion too, as soon as possible in the contract. And the underground risks are less of a risk based on the investigations, on the ground investigations they've done already. So they believe they're not going to run into trouble there. They would be your typical risks of costs increasing. Obviously, Arnon has mentioned the value engineering workshop, so there could be some more savings yet. But right now we've identified 200,000 already, which we're confident about, and we're asking for 175 contingency. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. A question from me, Di, is all the other wharves that council has been involved with regarding the kickstart money, the Dargaville Wharf and the Pahi Wharf, both have pontoons. The sketch that we have here on the final page of this paper, there is no indication at all of a pontoon. You're talking here about beach landings for barges in an area beside the wharf. We have a current unacceptable situation where boats ram into what is called in the paper here Fisherman's Point and cause irreparable damage to the environment, which I know is of great concern to iwi and other people also, and has been for a very long time, when the boats ram into the rock to try and get a secure toehold, and then the propellers are going, and then people going on and off with all their bikes when they're doing the bike tour, and so on and so on. I'm coming back to the start of my point here regarding pontoons, which are, I'm going to say, tide level, floating, shifting access levels for these wharves that were a good idea for Pahi and a good idea for Dargaville. The sketch that we see here, does this wharf have a pontoon?
No.
So no, it does not have a pontoon. So if it does not have a pontoon, when the tide is out, how high is it from the sea to where the wharf is going to be, and how do people get on and off the wharf onto the boat? Because the point of having the wharf is to be able to have people having access if they're carrying a bike or a backpack, or they're having a day trip, or they're carrying crates of saffron or amazing new produce from the local beautiful sandy soils of Potor. How do people get on and off the wharf if there's not a pontoon? Has that been considered? And you may say this is a design question. What we don't want to be doing is building a wharf that can't be used by people. 25 years ago, there was an elaborate, beautiful $100,000 set of designs built for a wharf that met iwi satisfaction at Poto, that met and answered these questions. That was 25 years ago. What is the level of thinking about pontoon and access to the tide if you're trying to get a boat on and off the wharf? Because if you could imagine you arrive at this floor level and the floor level of the wharf is up there, 6 meters above you.
Yeah, yeah.
And you go, and then the boat has no choice but either to sail away or to smash into the rock so that people can get on and off. Is there an answer to that?
It's probably not as technical as what you might like. But yeah, a pontoon was considered. I believe that's a dynamic environment, and there was technical reasons why it was ruled out for that location. And then there is an element of the Kaipara Harbour across the board. Any boatie, whether they're a passenger transport or anyone else for that matter, needs to consider the tide and what's going on with the weather, particularly in Poto. So there's an element of that they just need to think about and when they plan their trips. Anyhow, as far as being able to, we had quite a lot of conversation about produce, and can we get produce on from that location to Auckland markets or whatever it might be. And so, for example, that wharf, you could drive a Mitsubishi Canter truck up it and load onto a boat off the end of it, produce. You couldn't take a 16-wheeler, you couldn't take a huge volumes of kumara across, but that sort of more boutique's not the right word, but the high value, lower volume produce, absolutely. So, and my understanding through what I've looked into and reflected on in the last few weeks is that is what our detailed business case identified. It was that sort of thing. It was never about transporting, huge barges transporting volumes and volumes of goods so much.
Thank you for your answers. Councillor Vincent, then we're going to go to Councillor Wills on the phone and Councillor Wilson-Collins. Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess I just want further confirmation from Sue, it would be, I think, regarding this reserves contribution fund. You said, Sue, that there was $400,000 available. Now, just please confirm to me that is uncommitted money and it's in effect the 10% rather than drawing on any of the 90%.
Yes, so this is district funds, and the 408,000 that I quoted you is contributions to the end of March this year. So just the most recent contributions. It doesn't include the balance that we had last year was 1.4 million, and obviously there are some projects that council has authorised to come out of that, but there is plenty of funding. We only budgeted, just to give you an idea, we only budgeted 260,000 of income to the district fund, and as I said, there's going to be 408,000, so there's even more than what we originally anticipated. So, and that's 20% comes out to the 30th of June this year. After that date, we changed to 10%.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I've also appreciated the questions from my colleagues that have pulled out the story for me, so I'm good to go. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Wills on the telephone, then Councillor Wilson-Collins. Thank you. Okay, we'll just go direct to Councillor Wilson-Collins. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I did have one more question earlier, and that was to do, Sue, you mentioned the commercial operators would have difficulty using the wharf in some weather conditions. But I just wanted to actually get some confirmation that they are still in support of this option too. I think in an earlier briefing or meeting, there was discussion that they would have preferred option 1, but they would prefer option 2 rather than no wharf. Is that correct? I just want to get that clear in my head.
Yeah, through the Mayor, that's correct. They would prefer option 1. That makes it easier for them in storms. But option 2 is preferable if council is not going to put in further funding, the greater amount, which would be about 900,000.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
All right, thank you. We could go on with questions, I'm sure, but we need to keep this item moving along at this point. Thank you, Di. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Anand.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mayor? Sorry.
Thank you for
Can you
your
hear me?
responses. Is that Councillor Wills? Sorry, Di.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor
Can you hear
Wills.
me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yes.
My apologies.
Questions from you.
I just really, there's been a lot of questions. I just really wanted to add a very short sentence. There seems to be misunderstanding. The question that I raised about the beach landing and the damage to the foreshore by the commercial operators hitting the sandstone is what currently takes place, not what I was concerned about with the option B or option 2. It's what's happening at the moment, and it's not feasible that it be allowed to continue. That was my comment in my questions to Sue Davidson.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, Councillor Wills, do you have any questions for clarification at this point about the item?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, but please stay on the line. Thank you. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Di. We're at the end of the questions here, so we'll move into the statements at this point. This item was originally on our agenda for the March Kaipara District Council ordinary meeting. It was deferred following conversations we had with central government people, including the MPs, around them trying to find the extra $260,000 so the Kaipara District Council would not have to resort to the decision that we are faced with today. At this point, central government has still not returned to us with a response to that request. So we are faced, excuse me, Councillor Wills, we're hearing the wind in your telephone. If you'd be so kind as to just, stand still. Thank you. So at this point, Kaipara District Council is faced with a further regrettable kind of wicked decision that we have to make here because the costs continue to escalate in an inflationary period that New Zealand is in. What we are hearing across all of our projects is that the costs are escalating. The security of supply for various materials is meaning that the project costs just go up and up and up. For us as Kaipara District Council, the irony in this particular moment in the decision we have before us is that if we were to say, stop, do nothing, then the costs get higher and higher and higher. And we would actually be faced with a penalty of having to pay back money that's already paid and has already been. So we come back to the first principles here, which are that Kaipara District Council set out to create a wharf at Potor to reconnect Waikato and the community in Potor to the sea for safe passage by people and goods, for people and goods from Potor to the rest of the country. As we know, Poto is our most remote community, and as we also know, Poto is the closest part of Northland to the Auckland Sky Tower. So the interesting thing for us all is that we are faced here with a back to the future sort of option, really, by saying, well, here is the moment for Kaipara District Council to expend a grant which is given to us 90% by central government for this wharf. And the simple fact is that Kaipara District Council, from its own resources, would never be able to create an amenity of this scale for the community, and to be able to complete the network of wharves that we are looking at for Kaipara Harbour and making the best of this extraordinary place. So from me, quite simply, there's not a moment to be lost, and there really is only the one option, because the others are very expensive, and we are in a situation where simply saying, no, we won't do it at all, would cost us more than doing it. So I'm grateful to Sue Davidson for the work regarding the Reserve Contributions Fund and how that is able to be employed in this case. I recommend that Kaipara District Council gets on as quickly as possible with the construction of this wharf before costs go even higher. Thank you. Councillor Wills as the seconder, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can hear me clearly?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. I support the second option as the more economically justifiable. The first option puts the council, I mean, despite my enthusiasm for the Wharf at Poto, that first option puts the council at too much risk financially, and there's too many imponderables in there, and we've seen these costs escalate. I'd rather see a slightly trimmed down construction actually take place as to something that may never occur. We are running out of patience, or MB's running out of patience with this process. One of the questions raised before was regarding the public support for the shift in the wharf. I was at all of the public consultations on this project, and there was a majority of the locals actually wanted the wharf where it currently, the option B proposal is, which is more or less where the previous wharf piles are still showing from a previous wharf. They accepted the Fisherman's Point option because that was what was put forward by the consultants at the time. But they did raise a number of concerns about any potential damage to that point. I also made a comment earlier about the commercial boats hitting the sandstone foreshore. That was to do with what currently takes place now, and I've witnessed it myself numerous times, and the fact that environmentally it can't be allowed to continue, but if it stopped, it would stop the ferries that are currently part of that cycleway circuit around Northland. So if the local iwi or community pushed to have that stop, we'd actually lose any commercial facility down there that even currently operates, minimal as it is. So I'm hoping that the rest of the council will support this, and I would like to thank Sue Davison, whose efforts in all of our projects has been pretty impressive. So I'll leave it there, and I just ask for, I know it's more money, but the presentation that we've had suggests that we've got a good chance of not needing to use any of it. So I hope you'll support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go to Councillor Curnow, Councillor Wilson-Collins, Councillor Vincent, then Councillor Delavaris Woodcock, Councillor Withy. So sorry, that's the order in which you've caught my eyes. So Councillor Curnow, then Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just want to comment on the sort of regrettable timeline on all of this. although many of those reasons are not under our control. So I do acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge the fact that those staff, as soon as we've been able to get people out there and actually start considering this in more detail, we have, but there are issues with that timeline which have sort of flowed on into the funding aspects. And also, I remain somewhat concerned about the environment. It's a high-risk environment, and we're in well, today's an example. We haven't had the rain, but we're certainly starting to get the wind. So there are likely to be challenges in the construction that we may not have expected. But I'm hoping that the value engineering process will flesh those out and make sure that risk is allocated appropriately. However, there are opportunities that have been identified in this for decades, and also more recently in the business case that was done. So on balance, I do support this. The community supports it. The business case supports it. We're assured that the financial side can be managed and that we may not even need the additional funding that we're being asked for, or at least some of it. So on balance, yes, I'm leaning towards it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson-Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Curnow and those that have spoken before me have actually already articulated a lot of the points that I wanted to make. I suppose I just want to thank Sue and Di and Anand, especially Sue. We know that you've been trying to manage your normal job plus infrastructure for some time now, and I just think that this paper and these discussions today have been really valuable. I'd like to, I also appreciate the questioning that's happened today. When I came into this meeting this morning, I obviously didn't have the full picture. That's been fleshed out a lot better today to be able to make a robust decision that's in the best interests of the community in Potor and for the wider Kaipara district. The Wharf in Potor has, as the Mayor has already mentioned, has been a project that rears its head for years, and now to get to this sort of point of our section of this PGF funding project, and to think that it might fall over again is hugely disappointing. I don't have a personal connection to Potor, only in that in a previous life I used to go there to fish off Fisherman's Rock quite often. So just the idea that there might still be access on Fisherman's Rock to be able to fish and off the end of the wharf is pretty spectacular. And I just hope that I can see the advantages of option 2. It's possibly a shame that we haven't got the bells and whistles and the absolute best option of option 1, but I'm very mindful that we can't go down that track with the price of everything that and the scarcity of materials and just the issues that we're facing there. When central government started this whole PGF process, I'm sure they didn't actually realise the problems that everyone would be facing trying to get these projects through to the end. And I'm hoping that we will see a wharf in Potor and we will stop this environmental impact on the beach landings and we'll get some more action down there. So yeah, thank you very much, team, and we'll see what happens next. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I support the motion, but I just would like to take the opportunity to clarify my thinking in relation to the funding of it, in that I was quite concerned to see when we were dealing with the cost overrun for the Pahi Wharf setup, that it should come out of the local area contribution, like ring fenced, as opposed to the district-wide proportion which was proposed. Both Dargaville and Pahi had existing wharves. They got pontoons added to them to make them more usable. I see that this Potor Wharf as being of much more regional strategic significance in getting established as part of the network, because currently there is nothing. And for that reason, I support the use of district-wide funds for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor De La Varas Woodcock.
Yes, Mr Mayor. So I have a photo before me of Poto Point. It's a historic photo and we can see the wharf as it was then and where I believe it should go now. So I support the motion. I think it's crucial to have this as an access point for the cyclists travel and linking up, and it's strategic to have this project go ahead because of the Kaihu Valley Trail. And I would hope that all members of this council support the Kaihu Valley Trail as they are supporting other strategic investments that have come from the Provincial Growth Fund. So all speed ahead. Thank you, Diane Miller, for your carrying this project through to what I'm hearing around this table, which is a broad support so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitty.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I guess this is a classic example of being between a rock and a hard place. We've got options in front of us which really give you no other alternative for council to say we should go ahead with option 2. It is the one option that's been presented that has the least potential cost to council. It has the lower level of risk, and it will still provide the majority of the benefits that are being sought with having a wharf down at Poto. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned, but under the criteria of the Resource Management Act, reserve contributions can be used for things such as recreational activities, services, etc. And therefore, this overrun can be funded, as has been recommended, from the district-wide reserve contributions. If we chose the option not to proceed and we ended up having to pay money back, I don't think under the Resource Management Act criteria, we could fund that out of resource reserve contributions. So it would be the direct cost to council which would have to be serviced from the general rate. So I think that is also a consideration that from prudent financial management, which most of us around the table campaigned on many years ago, I think we have no option but to go with option 2. The other thing I would ask, and this is going out way into the future, too often we see things put to this elected member group for funds and for funding on projects with some form of business case to support them. What we don't do, and what we also, yes, I was very familiar with in the private sector, return to these projects after they've been operational for some time and do if you like, a quality assurance check on the actual business cases that were originally presented to justify the expenditure. And I hope that when this wharf is finally built, that in 5 or 10 years' time, someone in council has the time to go through and just determine what has been the economic benefit of this wharf at Poto. What are the significant issues that have been solved or presented in terms of opportunities for the district, and how well was the original justification, how accurate and how good that, what quality that has been. Because I think that's a very important closing of the loop, and it gives staff a better understanding of the need to address business cases with a degree of accuracy that possibly hasn't always been taken into account. So summing up, I certainly support this option, and all the best, and I hope that it turns out that we don't get any surprises, because one thing we don't like are surprises. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So all of the elite members have spoken to this point at this point. So we're going to bring the matter to a vote now, and this will be a very simple vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? It is a unanimous vote. If you please record, Tracy, that that's a unanimous vote. Thank you. This brings us to an end of this item. And so Godspeed to the Poto Wharf, he says after 25 years. He's hoping this one lands fast for us all. Thank you. So at this point, we are at the closure of the meeting. We will not be closing with a karakia. And the tikanga advice that I've had is that the entire day that we elected members are involved in will conclude with a karakia at the end of the day. So at this point, nevertheless, we are at the end of this item and this extraordinary council meeting regarding Poto Wharf, and a clear decision has been made unanimously by the council to proceed with the Poto Wharf on its location on the beach at Poto. So thank you everyone for your attendance today. Tracy, you may stop the live link now. Have a good day everyone. Kia pai tō rā. Thank you.